There are secrets that change everything. Not the kind that make headlines or sell tabloids, the quiet kind. The kind someone tells you in a whisper during a commercial break, when the cameras are off and the audience is shuffling in their seats waiting for the show to continue. The kind of secret that makes you realize the person sitting next to you, the person you've known for 30 years, the person who's made you laugh 1,000 times, is about to disappear, and there's nothing you can do about it. November 4th, 1986, Studio One at NBC Burbank. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Lucille Ball was scheduled for a 12-minute segment, a light interview, some stories about the old days, maybe a clip from I Love Lucy. The kind of appearance Lucy had done hundreds of times, charming, funny, professional, easy. But something happened that night, something that wasn't in the script, something that would stop the show cold and leave Johnny Carson unable to speak. Because during a commercial break, with the cameras off and the microphones dead, Lucy leaned over and whispered 7 words into Johnny's ear. 7 words that changed everything. And when the cameras came back on, Johnny's eyes were wet. Lucy was staring at her hands. And for the next 9 minutes, 42 million Americans watched 2 old friends say goodbye in the only way they knew how. On live television, in front of everyone, with grace, with humor, with dignity, and with the kind of quiet heartbreak that only comes when you know you're running out of time. If you were alive in 1986, you knew Lucille Ball. Not the way you know celebrities today, through social media or reality shows. You knew Lucy the way you knew your own family. She'd been in your living room every week for 35 years. First on I Love Lucy, then The Lucy Show, then Here's Lucy, then specials, guest appearances, reruns running on every channel at every hour of the day. Lucy wasn't just famous, she was family. 3 generations had grown up watching her. Grandmothers who'd seen the original broadcasts in the 50s, mothers who'd watched the reruns in the 60s and 70s, kids who were discovering her all over again in the 80s. She was 75 years old in November of 1986, still sharp, still working, still Lucy. She'd just finished filming a TV movie called Stone Pillow, where she played a homeless woman living on the streets of New York. Critics said it was too dark, too serious, too far from the Lucy people wanted to see. But Lucy didn't care. She'd spent 50 years being funny. She wanted to do something real before it was too late, before she ran out of time. What nobody knew, what the press didn't know, what the public didn't know, what even her own children didn't fully understand yet, was that time was running out faster than anyone realized. Lucille Ball had been feeling tired for months. Not the normal tired that comes with being 75 and working too hard. A different kind of tired, a heaviness in her chest, a shortness of breath, a sense that something inside her body was quietly, steadily breaking down. She'd seen doctors, they'd run tests, and in September of 1986, 6 weeks before her Tonight Show appearance, they'd given her the news. Stage 4. Her heart, her lungs, complications from decades of smoking, from the stress of running Desilu Productions, from a lifetime of pushing herself harder than anyone should push themselves. The doctors were careful with their words. They talked about treatment options, about managing symptoms, about quality of life. But Lucy was smart enough to read between the lines. She asked the question directly. How long? The doctor hesitated. A year, maybe 18 months. It's hard to say. Lucy nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just asked if she could keep working. The doctor said she could do whatever she felt strong enough to do. Lucy decided she felt strong enough to do one more Tonight Show. One last appearance with Johnny. To say goodbye without saying goodbye. Lucy and Johnny went back a long way. Not just professionally, though Johnny had been a guest on The Lucy Show in 1968, and Lucy had appeared on The Tonight Show dozens of times over the years. But personally, they'd both survived the same brutal machinery of show business. The agents, the executives, the critics, the constant pressure to be funny on command. They'd both lost marriages, both struggled with what it meant to be an icon when all you wanted to be was a person. They understood each other, and more than that, they trusted each other. When Lucy walked onto the Tonight Show stage that November night, Johnny stood up immediately, didn't wait for her to reach the couch, met her halfway and hugged her. A real hug, not the Hollywood air kiss version. The audience applauded warmly. Lucy waved, smiled her famous smile, and settled into the chair next to Johnny's desk. She looked good, hair perfect, makeup flawless, that sharp Lucy energy still present in her eyes. If you didn't know better, you'd think she could go on forever. The interview started like every Lucy interview started. Easy banter, old stories, Johnny asking about Desi, about the kids, about the early days of television when nobody knew what they were doing, and they were all just making it up as they went along. Lucy told the story about the time they couldn't afford a studio audience for I Love Lucy, so they hired people off the street for $1 each and gave them free sandwiches. Johnny laughed. The audience laughed. It was comfortable, familiar. The kind of conversation two old friends have when they've told the same stories 100 times but still enjoy the telling. Lucy talked about Stone Pillow, about playing a homeless woman, about how strange it felt to do something dramatic after a lifetime of comedy. "Did you enjoy it?" Johnny asked. Lucy paused, thought about it. "I don't know if enjoy is the right word," she said carefully, "but I needed to do it. You understand? I needed to know if I could still do something that scared me." Johnny nodded. "And could you?" "Yeah," Lucy said quietly. "I could." Something passed between them in that moment, something unspoken, a recognition. And then the director called for a commercial break. This is where it happened. The cameras cut, the studio lights dimmed slightly, the audience relaxed, people stood up to stretch, headed to the bathroom, checked their watches. Johnny leaned back in his chair, taking a sip of water. Lucy shifted in her seat, and then very quietly she said, "Johnny, I need to tell you something." Johnny looked at her. Lucy's smile was gone. Her face had changed completely. "What is it?" Johnny asked. Lucy glanced at the audience, at the cameras, at the crew, making sure nobody was listening, and then she leaned close to Johnny and whispered. Nobody knows exactly what Lucy said in that moment. The microphones were off, the cameras weren't recording. It was just Lucy and Johnny, 18 inches apart, having a private conversation in a room full of 300 people who couldn't hear a word. But people who were there, crew members, band members, Ed McMahon, they saw Johnny's face change, saw his eyes widen, saw him go very still, saw him reach out and take Lucy's hand. One sound technician later said he saw Johnny mouth the word no. A camera operator said Lucy was crying, not sobbing, just tears running down her face while she talked. The commercial break lasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds. For most of that time, Lucy talked and Johnny listened. And when the director gave the 30-second warning, when the floor manager signaled that they were coming back live, Johnny didn't let go of Lucy's hand. He just held it, and Lucy squeezed back, and then the cameras came on. When The Tonight Show returned from commercial, something was different. You could feel it immediately. The energy in the room had shifted. Johnny's face was composed, but his eyes were red. Lucy was looking down at her hands, folded in her lap. The audience sensed it too. The light chatter died down. People sat up straighter, waiting. Johnny took a breath, looked at the camera, and then he did something he almost never did. He broke the fourth wall. "Folks," Johnny said quietly, "we're going to take a moment here." The audience went silent. Johnny turned to Lucy. She looked up at him. And Johnny, who'd spent 24 years making jokes, deflecting emotion, keeping things light, said something completely honest. "Lucy just told me something during the break, and I need a second." He stopped, composed himself. Lucy reached over and put her hand on his arm. "It's okay, Johnny," she said softly. Johnny shook his head. "No, it's not." The camera held on both of them, two of the biggest stars in television history, sitting in silence, on live television. And then Johnny looked at the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady but quiet, "this is Lucy." And that's all he said. Just, "This is Lucy." But the way he said it, the weight behind those 3 words, made it clear this wasn't an introduction. It was a recognition, an acknowledgement, a way of saying, look at her, really look at her. Because she won't be here forever. Because none of us will be here forever. Because this moment, right now, is all we have. The audience understood, and they began to applaud. It started as a regular applause, the kind you give a beloved guest. But then someone stood up, and then another person, and another. And within seconds, the entire studio audience was on its feet. Not cheering, not whistling, just clapping, steadily, respectfully. The applause lasted 3 minutes and 7 seconds. Lucy sat very still, tears running down her face, not bothering to wipe them away. Johnny stood up, still holding her hand, and helped her to her feet. They stood there together, Johnny Carson and Lucille Ball, while 300 people stood and applauded. And then, slowly, the applause faded. People sat back down. Johnny and Lucy sat back down. And Lucy, being Lucy, smiled through her tears and said, "Well, that was embarrassing." The audience laughed. Not a big laugh, a gentle one, a relieved one. And just like that, the tension broke. What happened next is one of the most remarkable 9 minutes in television history. Because Lucy and Johnny, knowing what they now knew, knowing what the audience didn't know, decided to just talk, really talk, about life, about work, about what it all meant. Johnny asked Lucy what she was most proud of. Lucy thought about it. "The work," she said simply. "Not the fame, not the money. The actual work, getting the joke right, making people laugh, That moment when you do a scene and you just know, it's perfect. Johnny nodded. You miss it? Every day. Why'd you stop? Lucy smiled sadly. I didn't stop. It stopped needing me. She paused. You know what nobody tells you about getting old in this business? It's not that you can't do it anymore. It's that people stop asking you to. They look at you and they see the past. They don't see what you could still do. They see what you already did. Johnny was quiet for a moment. I think people still see you, Lucy. Maybe, but not the way they used to. And that's okay. That's how it should be. You can't be young forever. You can't be the ingenue forever. Eventually you have to step aside and let the next person have their turn. But you're not done yet, Johnny said. Lucy looked at him. A long look. Meaningful. No, she said quietly. Not yet. They talked about Desi Arnaz, Lucy's ex-husband, who died of lung cancer 3 years earlier in 1983. Do you think about him? Johnny asked. All the time, Lucy said. We had a complicated marriage, a difficult marriage, but we built something together. I Love Lucy wasn't just a show, it was ours, and nobody can take that away. Not the divorce, not the years, not anything. Her voice got softer. I dream about him sometimes. We're back on the set, young again, running through a scene, and in the dream we get it right. Every take, every joke, everything works perfectly. She smiled. And then I wake up, and he's gone, and I'm old, and all that's left is the work. Johnny's eyes were wet again. The work's enough, Lucy. Is it? She asked. Not rhetorically, really asking. Johnny thought about it. It has to be, because it's all any of us have. The moments we created, the laughter we gave people, that doesn't die. Lucy nodded slowly. I hope you're right. They talked about fear. About what it's like to stand in front of millions of people and try to be funny when you don't feel funny inside. Lucy said the secret was simple. You don't wait to feel funny. You just do the work. You show up. You hit your marks. You say the lines. And somewhere in the middle of doing it, the funny finds you. Johnny asked if there were nights when the funny didn't find her. Oh, plenty, Lucy said. Plenty of nights when I wanted to walk off the set. When I wanted to quit. When I thought, what's the point? I'm just a middle-aged woman putting on a wig and acting like an idiot. But you didn't quit. No, because quitting is easy. Anybody can quit. It takes courage to keep going when you don't want to. When you're tired, when you think nobody cares anymore. She looked directly at Johnny. But here's the thing, Johnny. They do care. People care more than you think. They need the laughter. They need something to look forward to on Monday night after a long day. They need to see someone make a fool of themselves and survive it. That's what we give them. Not perfection. Survival. Johnny smiled. Is that what we're doing? Surviving? That's all any of us are doing. At one point, Johnny asked Lucy what advice she'd give to young performers starting out today. Lucy thought for a long time. Don't chase fame, she said finally. Fame is an accident. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But if you chase it, it'll ruin you. Chase the work instead. Chase being good at something. Chase making something you're proud of. The rest is just noise. Do you have regrets? Johnny asked. Lucy smiled. Of course. Everybody has regrets. I regret the marriages that didn't work. I regret not spending more time with my kids when they were young. I regret working so hard that I forgot to live. She paused. But I don't regret the work. Not for a second, because the work was real. The work mattered, and when I'm gone, that's what'll be left. Not the regrets. The work. Johnny nodded. They sat in silence for a moment, and then Lucy said something that broke everyone in that studio. I'm glad I got to do this one more time, Johnny. Her voice was so quiet, so sincere. I'm glad I got to sit here with you, to talk, to remember, because you're one of the few people who understands what this life cost. Johnny couldn't speak. Lucy smiled at him. Thank you for letting me say goodbye. The audience didn't understand what she meant. Not fully. They thought she meant goodbye to The Tonight Show, goodbye to late-night television. But Johnny understood. You could see it in his face. He understood exactly what Lucy meant, and he couldn't say anything, because if he said anything, he'd break down completely. So instead he did something simpler. He stood up, walked around his desk, and hugged Lucy. A long hug. The kind of hug you give someone when you don't know if you'll see them again. The audience started applauding again. Softly at first, then louder, and when Johnny finally pulled away, he looked at Lucy with absolute clarity and said, You're the best there ever was. Lucy smiled through tears. So are you, Johnny. The segment that was supposed to run 12 minutes ran 23. Johnny never looked at the clock, never signaled the director, never tried to move on. When it finally ended, Lucy stood up, waved to the audience, and walked off stage. Johnny didn't sit back down. He just stood there, watching her go. And when she disappeared into the wings, he turned to the camera and said very quietly, "Ladies and gentlemen, Lucille Ball." Then he paused, took a breath, and added, "We'll be right back." But the way he said it, the weight in his voice, made it clear he wasn't sure if that was true. Lucille Ball died on April 26, 1989. 2.5 years after that Tonight Show appearance. She'd outlived the doctor's predictions by almost a year. She spent those final years working when she could, spending time with her children and grandchildren, and quietly putting her affairs in order. She didn't do many interviews, didn't make many public appearances, but people who saw her said she seemed peaceful, like she'd said what she needed to say, like she'd done what she came to do. The Tonight Show appearance in November 1986 was her last major television interview. She chose Johnny deliberately because she trusted him, because she knew he'd understand, because she knew he wouldn't exploit the moment, and he didn't. After Lucy died, Johnny dedicated an entire episode of The Tonight Show to her memory. He showed clips, told stories, had guests who'd worked with her come on and share their memories. But he never mentioned the conversation they'd had during that commercial break in 1986, never revealed what Lucy had whispered to him, never used it for ratings or publicity. It remained private, between him and Lucy, the way she'd wanted it. Years later, after Johnny retired, a reporter asked him if he'd ever tell people what Lucy had said to him that night. Johnny smiled. "No, why not? Because it was for me, not for the world. Some things are private, even on live television." The reporter pressed, "Can you at least say what it was about?" Johnny thought for a long time. Then he said, "She told me she was dying, and she asked me not to cry. She said she'd had a good run, and she wanted to go out the way she lived, making people laugh. So that's what we did. We laughed, we remembered, we said goodbye without saying goodbye." He paused. "And I kept my promise. I didn't cry. Not until she left the stage." There's something profound about watching two people who've known each other for decades have a real conversation on television. No pretense, no performance, just honesty. That's what happened on November 4th, 1986. Lucy told Johnny she was dying. Johnny held her hand, and together they gave America something more valuable than entertainment. They gave us a model for how to face mortality with grace, how to say goodbye without melodrama, how to honor a lifetime of work without making it about the end. Lucy didn't want pity. She didn't want tears. She wanted to be remembered for the laughter, for the work, for the 50 years she'd spent making people happy. And Johnny gave her that. He let her control the narrative. He let her decide how the story would be told. And in doing so, he gave her the greatest gift one friend can give another: dignity. If you go back and watch that episode now, if you can find it, you'll see something remarkable. You'll see two people who know this is the last time, who know the clock is running out. And instead of being maudlin or sentimental, they choose to celebrate what was. The work, the laughter, the absurdity of making a living by being foolish in public. You'll see Lucy making jokes even as tears run down her face. You'll see Johnny struggling to hold it together and occasionally failing. You'll see two professionals who've spent their entire lives in front of cameras deciding in this one moment to be completely real. And you'll see an audience that understands, maybe not fully, but enough, that they're witnessing something rare. A farewell, not performative, not rehearsed, just true. Lucille Ball was 75 years old when she appeared on The Tonight Show in November 1986. She died at 77. In those final 2.5 years, she didn't do much press, didn't give many interviews, but she did write letters to friends, to colleagues, to people who'd been part of her life. After she died, Johnny Carson received a letter from Lucy's estate. She'd written it months before her death and left instructions for it to be delivered to him. The letter was short. It said, "Dear Johnny, thank you for letting me say goodbye my way. Thank you for not making it about the dying. Thank you for remembering the laughter. You're a true friend. See you on the other side. Lucy." Johnny never spoke about that letter publicly, but people close to him said he kept it in his desk drawer, and sometimes, late at night, he'd take it out and read it. A private moment between two old friends. The way it should be. There's a quote from Lucille Ball that people like to repeat. She said it in an interview years before she got sick. "I'm not funny. What I am is brave." People always thought she was being modest, deflecting compliments the way celebrities do. But if you watch that final Tonight Show appearance, if you really watch it, you realize she was telling the truth. The courage it took to sit on that couch, knowing she was dying. The courage it took to tell Johnny, knowing it would hurt him. The courage it took to smile and laugh and tell stories when what she really wanted to do was scream at the unfairness of it all. That's not comedy. That's bravery. Johnny Carson died in 2005, 19 years ago. The generation that knew him best, that grew up watching him every night, is disappearing. Soon there won't be anyone left who remembers what it felt like to watch The Tonight Show in real time. To stay up past your bedtime as a kid, sneaking downstairs to watch Johnny's monologue. To come home from a bad day and know that at 11:30 Johnny would make you laugh. To feel like he was talking to you, personally, even though 40 million other people were watching too. That's what we've lost. Not just Johnny, not just Lucy, but the kind of television they represented. The kind where two professionals could sit down and have a real conversation without irony or pretense. Where emotion wasn't a gimmick. Where silence wasn't dead air. Where saying goodbye could be done with grace instead of spectacle. On November 4th, 1986, Lucille Ball whispered 7 words to Johnny Carson during a commercial break. And those 7 words changed everything. They weren't, "I'm dying." They were, "I wanted you to know first." Because Johnny wasn't just a colleague, he was a friend, and friends deserve the truth, even when the truth is hard, even when the truth is final. And Johnny, who'd spent 24 years making jokes, avoiding sentimentality, keeping things light, chose in that moment to do something different. He chose to be present, to bear witness, to let Lucy have her goodbye the way she wanted it, with laughter, with dignity, with grace. And for 23 minutes, America watched 2 people who dedicated their lives to making others happy take a moment to be honest about what it costs. The loneliness, the sacrifice, the knowledge that eventually the work ends and all you're left with is the question, did it matter? And Lucy, in those final moments on that couch, answered that question. Yes, it mattered. The laughter mattered. The work mattered. The joy she'd given millions of people over 50 years mattered. And Johnny, by simply sitting with her, holding her hand, and letting the moment be what it was, confirmed it. If you're watching this now, you're probably wondering what the lesson is. What you're supposed to take away from this story. And maybe the lesson is simple. Tell the people you love that you love them. Before it's too late. Before the commercial break ends. Before the cameras come back on and you have to smile and pretend everything is fine. Lucy did that. She told Johnny, "This is it. This is goodbye. I wanted you to know." And Johnny heard her, really heard her, and gave her the gift of being seen one last time. Not as Lucy Ricardo, not as the queen of comedy, just as Lucy, a woman who'd worked hard, loved deeply, and was running out of time. That's what happened on November 4th, 1986, in Studio One at NBC Burbank, during a commercial break, when the cameras were off and the world wasn't watching. One friend told another friend the truth, and when the cameras came back on, they said goodbye the only way they knew how, with grace, with humor, with love, and with the quiet understanding that some moments are too precious to waste.